Good evening from Kwendat in Bamenda, chief town of the Northwest region. This is the English newscast. The headlines. Youth all over the national territory in Cameroon that yesterday celebrated the 55th edition of the National Youth Day, a day chosen to commemorate the referendum that took place on the 11th of February 1961 that of course saw the southern part of British Cameroon decided in favor of joining newly independent Cameroon. Cameroon's Territorial Administration Minister Dr. Paul Atanganji is heading a tripartite commission for the voluntary repatriation of over 5,000 Nigerian refugees living in the country. The minister heading the Cameroonian delegation arrived at Marowa in the far north region of the country on Tuesday, same as Babangida Umaru Zulum, governor of Borno State, heading the Nigerian delegation. Ghana's parliament has shut down for at least 3 weeks over a surge in coronavirus cases among lawmakers and staff. At least 17 members of parliament and 151 support staffs have been infected with the coronavirus pandemic, which had already forced lawmakers to limit their assembly meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all for the headlines. Stay tuned for the news in full. Good evening once more and welcome back. Youth all over the national territory that in Cameroon yesterday, February 11, celebrated the 55th edition of the National Youth Day, a day chosen to commemorate the referendum that took place on the 11th of February 1961 that saw the southern part of British Cameroon decide in favor of joining newly independent Cameroon. More details in this report. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in Cameroon in March of 2020, the government attempted imposing measures that could help in combating the spread of the virus. Confinement, compulsory wearing of face masks, regular hand wash, and the respect of the 1.5 meters distancing amongst persons were some of the measures, even though it was only short-lived. Schools had to close down for the same reason, with churches, markets, and large crowds prohibited. However, this was just for the time being when the virus was threatening and scary to some, even though others considered and are still convinced that there is no pandemic in Africa, and even if it is, it doesn't kill black people, a myth that is yet to be proven true. Barely a year after the outbreak of the pandemic in the country, only 1 in 10 persons are currently seen with face masks, and people do not even respect the 1.5 meters distancing and talk less of the regular hand washing. Even when there is a threatening evidence of a second wave of the virus hitting the country, people care less. The government on her part accepted the hosting of the Shan Games and is annulling the Youth Day, a decision questioned by many if actually the government is serious about combating the spread of the pandemic. It is noted that during the Shan Games, spectators were not obliged to provide a negative COVID test before being led to the field. Even though all players had to go through testing, some were tested positive and unfortunately they had already come in contact with other players. What measures have been taken so far to ensure that those they came in contact with are not infected and have not infected others already? A question that needs answers only from those who want to understand the neglect of what should not be neglected. The Youth Day has been cancelled, but are the authorities aware that these youths are in the market, close to people who do not know their statuses? These youths are roaming around without masks, holding hands and contaminating each other. True that annulling the Youth March Pass, which is an essential part of the Youth Day to these youths because of non-respect of the barrier measures is essential.
Yes, for me it's necessary because prevention is better than cure. It's more easy to prevent than cure. Without quarantining them at home. Yes, so work for a number of times. Yes, I respect you. Thank you so much.
It is noted that barely 2 weeks to school resumption in October of 2020, 3 COVID cases were recorded in schools precisely in Douala in the littoral region. According to Minister Mununa Futso, other activities are to be realized offline with the strict respect of barrier measures, but what if the measures are respected for that day and these students go back to school the following day and continue with the daily routine of non-respect of these measures? According to statistics from Worldometer, the country currently has 31,394 COVID-19 cases with 474 deaths and 29,501 recoveries. Much still has to be done in corresponding with the steps we take to combat the virus. coronavirus. As the saying goes, together we stand, but divided we fall. It is better late than never. Cameroon's Territorial Administration Minister, Dr. Minister Paul Atanganji, is heading a tripartite commission for the voluntary repatriation of 5,000 Nigerian refugees living in the country. The minister heading the Cameroon delegation arrived in Marua in the Far North region on Tuesday, same as Babangana Umara Zulum, governor of the Borno state, heading the Nigerian delegation. After years of fleeing from the dreaded Boko Haram terrorist sect, the 5,000 refugees authorities say have expressed their desire to return home. Overseeing the efforts of the Commission to ensure the refugees' return is Olivier Guelumbier, representing the United Nations High Commission for Refugees in Cameroon. Many have, however, questioned how safe Nigeria's northern regions have become, given that the refugees have been sent home, although the war against terror is not seems far from over. Their departure, it should be noted, comes at a time when thousands more are streaming into Cameroon from the Central African Republic as the ongoing armed conflict in the country escalates. As a customary tradition, the head of state, President Paul Biya, addressed his young compatriots on Wednesday, eve of the National Youth Day celebration in the country. It was part of the 55th edition of the National Youth Day, which is being celebrated on February 11 each year without a parade for the 2021 session. What do we take home from the head of state speech? Attempted response in this report. It is in a particular context that the President of the Republic of Cameroon addressed the Cameroonian youth on February 10, 2021. Because of the pandemic with the new coronavirus, the National Youth Day was celebrated in a gloomy climate without a parade in the 10 regions of the country. However, in order not to depart from tradition, President Paul Biya used the pretext to speak to his youth. In his speech for the occasion, the head of state congratulated the young people for their strong mobilization during the conduct of the 6th edition of the African Nations Championship in Cameroon from January 16 to February 7, 2021. He once again called on these young people to continue to observe barrier measures at a time when in most countries in the world we observe a resurgence of the pandemic. However, this observation allowed the competition to take place in a suitable manner. However, President Paul Biya asked young people not to despair and to keep faith in the future of a Cameroon that wins in the preservation of the peace, unity and prosperity of the country despite the tense situation in the northwest and southwest regions. He thus calls for the patriotic spirit of all. After instructing the establishment of several youth support programs that are underway in several productive sectors, President Paul Biya once again called on the government to do everything to ensure that these programs are successful, because their implementation depends to a large extent the resolution of the thorny problem of youth employment in this country. In particular, he calls on compatriots who are conquering the world to come back and build their country. It should also be remembered that youth unemployment remains a major concern for observers, even if the government efforts remain visible. The founding chairman of the Social Democratic Front political party, Nijon Frundi, has of course announced he will no longer run for the position of the chairman of the party during the next National Elective Assembly convention of the party. Nijon Frundi, in a press dinner in a Yaoundé, that's a Thursday, February 11, 2021, told the press that it's time to hand over leadership to young, vibrant people with new ideas on how to move on with the political party and Cameroon. After 31 years as head of the party, he frowns at the high rate of propagation of fake news in Cameroon. Speaking at the press dinner, Denis Kemlemo, the first National Communications Secretary of the Social Democratic Front, stated that there is a need for the press to combat fake news. Ghana's parliament has shut down for at least 3 weeks over a surge in coronavirus cases among lawmakers and staff. At least 17 members of parliament and 151 support staffs have been infected with the coronavirus pandemic, which had already forced lawmakers to limit their assembly meetings. Of course, a report in this extract. The Speaker of the House, Alban Barbim, announced on Tuesday that the legislature would be in recess until March 2nd to make way for disinfection and sanitization of the premises. The West African country has reported 73,003 coronavirus cases, including 482 deaths since the pandemic began. Large social gatherings such as funerals, weddings and parties are banned, and the country's land and sea borders have remained closed to human traffic since March 2020, while beaches, nightclubs, cinemas and pubs continue to remain shut. Last month, Ghanaian soldiers were forced to intervene in parliament to quell a clash between opposing parties in chaotic scenes during the vote for the speaker. The new parliament is split down in the middle between the two main parties, posing the risk of political gridlock. During the opening of polling stations in Ghana, as voters elected a new president and 275 members of parliament, while President Nana Akufo-Addo was seeking re-election for a second term on December 7, COVID-19 protocols were strictly respected, with voters not wearing face masks being denied the opportunity to vote, and voters were advised to return home immediately after casting their vote. While sitting of the House was adjourned for 3 weeks, Parliament's appointment committees would continue to meet to consider the ministerial nominees of President Nana Akufo-Addo, who was re-elected in December 2020. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has urged support for his government's effort to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic as it struggles to implement a vaccination program and, of course, an economic recovery plan. This was after the country halted the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine to start inoculation of frontline healthcare workers after it was found to be minimally effective in preventing mild or moderate cases of the disease caused by the variant dominating in the country. Earlier this week, instead, the one dose of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine will be given to healthcare workers in the front line to launch South Africa's drive to vaccination 67% of its population of 60 million this year. The rollout of the vaccine is expected to start next week, pending approval from, of course, the country's South Africa Health Products Regulatory Authority. On to Gabon, where Gabonese President Ali Bongo Ondimba yesterday, Thursday, February 11 of 2021, stressed that Gabon is facing a second wave of the coronavirus pandemic, calling on citizens to their sense of responsibility and, of course, solidarity to face it. According to President Ali Bongo, this second wave is higher than the previous one, with a higher number of daily contaminations and accompanied by the threat of the new variant of the virus. More details in this report. In 2020, Gabon faced the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with courage and efficiency. In mid-December, the number of active cases, that is to say positive for the COVID-19 pandemic, fell to less than 100. But since then, this figure has again sharply increased to getting close to 1,000 cases, according to the President of Gabon. In an effort to conquer this rapid rise in cases, the President is asking everyone to have a determining role to play. Appealing to the sense of responsibility and solidarity, not forgetting civic duties, he urged the citizens to be more disciplined as it will fasten the race to win the battle. With more decisions to be taken in the days ahead in correspondence to the pandemic, which could disrupt the daily lives of citizens, but also which, according to President Ali Bongo, are aimed to protect the population and to accelerate the return to a normal life, is and remains his dearest wish. For the first time this year, 2021, the Gabonese head of state Ali Bongo Ondimba addressed the population. COVID-19 requires, he recalled, that the country remain in a worrying situation. If he felt that hospitals and the medical professional centers are ready to fight the battle against this enemy, he especially announced that in the days to come, decisions likely to disrupt the lives of Gabonese could be taken to face the scourging spread of the virus. Has the head of state spoken to prepare public opinion for a new containment of Greater Libreville? Statistics from Worldometer suggest that the country currently has over 12,171 cases with 71 deaths and 11,275 recoveries. As the president gives the go for hospitals and medical centers the readiness to host patients and combat the spread of the virus, he calls on every citizen to stay united and disciplined because, as the slogan states, together we can. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your keen attention. It is on that note that we end this edition of the English Newscast. Have a great weekend and be safe until Monday, same time.